Yay.
Oh my God! Let's see if I remember how to do all this.
So Anna,
Yay!
on my side,
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
You schlepped a schlep to come here.
Oh yeah, I wanted to see this first.
Okay.
Do you need airburst access?
No, I didn't.
Wi-Fi? Okay.
Okay. Let's give it a few
Yeah,
more.
we're still early. So if I'm logged in, I just click this. Okay.
Yeah, and you're gonna monitor the
Sure will.
and the link is posted in groups.drupal?
It is.
Okay.
So am I supposed to see it already? I have to play?
It did play.
Yay.
Okay, we had some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
We vary rooms and do an
Yeah,
hour,
we have a
every
different room every
projector,
time.
And every room is completely different. So.
Same story everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Why is this not working?
Strangely enough, I had fewer problems with this kind of thing with my Windows laptop than I do with this thing.
I think again, Mac's trying to be helpful in this case.
Yeah, but I don't want help.
Exactly. You're like, I don't want to switch resolutions.
Now I
So
feel.
we're going to have a streaming too?
Yeah, it's on. It's
going
recorded. Yeah, and it's streaming, and you're monitoring the presentation. That's good.
I don't have the sound on it because I put headphones on to make sure.
Just check the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And it will post
Actually, I'm
the
gonna.
archive version later.
Where is
so you
the
can look at it.
like further around the corner?
I don't know where the closest is.
All right, I'm going to run.
Sure. Is Brian a jury duty today? Or?
He is.
I just saw her for some values of bacon on there.
So you can buy what?
Yeah, it's a straight shot from 60th edition.
Oh, you are from UCB.
That's right. How'd you get it?
I didn't go to street.
This one's straight.
Yeah, I live here. It's only 15 minutes from here.
I'm gonna go back there. Go back to the
In the visitor wireless network works fine. Return. Yeah. All right, thanks.
I think this one works better than ours.
Mm.
I'm standing here for. Vision Bay?
Vision Bay.
Okay. Should we get going?
Yeah, so we can get going, and then Anna can just check it when she starts speaking.
Yeah.
Recording. So we'll go ahead and start. This is a session on Behat. We typically begin by just going around the room and introducing yourself. So I'm Kathleen Liu, work here in UC Berkeley, and Central IT and Web Platform Services Group. And we'll go to Karen.
And I'm Caroline Boyd, and I also work in Central IT, Web Platform Services, and Accessibility.
Anna Gastowitz, and ditto what Caroline said.
Hi, I'm Stefan Topfstedt. I work at UCSF and IT Services, and that's what Drupal is together.
I'm Tom Holford. I work in the former Associate Vice Chancellor Business Administrative Services Office on Drupal websites and strategy management.
Gabriel Bayo, UCSF School of Medicine.
Susan Calico. I'm not at any of those places. But I'm here to find out about this tool.
All right. So how many of you have worked with some kind of automated testing before? 2, 3. Okay. So this is all about Behat, and my hypothesis here is that it will save your bacon, and I'm going to demonstrate how it works and why you should be using it. Oops. Let's just make sure this is connected here. Yeah.
So we have a couple people online.
Yeah. Okay. So Behat is. I'm going to show you. So what is Behat? It's a. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, but that's okay. So Behat, what Behat is it's a tool for behavior-driven development. And what behavior? How many of you have heard of test-driven development? Yeah. Okay. So behavior-driven development is kind of a logical extension of test-driven development, in which you write scenarios in plain language. The language is a little bit stilted, but anyone can write a scenario, and the scenarios then can become tests that you can automate, and you can run them manually or automatically. You can run them locally or remotely, and you can also run them as part of a continuous integration system. So here's an example of a pure BDD scenario. This is actually a relatively classic scenario. The link will take you to the full thing. So a BDD scenario has a feature, a role, and a benefit. So you can see up at the top, as an account holder, that's the role. I want to withdraw cash from an ATM, that's the feature, and so that I can get money when the bank is closed is the benefit. And then the scenario is described in a set of steps that are, again, plain language, and they capture the behavioral requirements of the application in a way that is easily verifiable. So scenario 1 is when the account has sufficient funds, and it goes through the whole step process of what the user does. The user is the I, etc., or the account holder, and what the machine does and what should happen. And then you have another scenario for insufficient funds. And so what this does is it helps you have this conversation between a developer and a business expert, where you're all talking about the same things as far as what the requirements of your application are. So that's really what Behat is. Behat isn't. There are many things that Behat isn't. One of them is unit testing. Unit testing takes as small a chunk of functionality as possible and tests it in isolation, so that, and if your site is built up a bunch of building blocks or modules, you'll probably have some unit tests in them. A lot of Drupal modules and Drupal core come with unit tests. And what a unit test does is it tests the smallest piece of functionality possible in isolation. But if you're actually building a Drupal site, that's not going to work for testing all of the complex interactions between modules and all of the stuff you've added on top, and it doesn't test integration or anything like that. And another thing that Behat isn't is the perfect solution, the be-all and end-all of everything, because there are some things that you can't automate, and I would say that usability testing and acceptance testing are some of those things you just can't automate. You still need to have human eyes on the application for usability purposes. So this scenario here is pretty cool, but you might be asking, how does this scenario save your bacon? And the way it does is through automated testing. you could write these scenarios just on a piece of paper, and they would be useful for the conversation between developers and business experts and users. And so still there is a value in that even without any system behind it. But one thing that Behat gives you is the ability to take that scenario and to turn it into a test that can be run automatically. So I'm going to shift. Yeah, well, okay, you can see that. I'm going to shift gears for a little bit here. What I'm going to show you as far as the hands-on, I think a lot of people who are BDD purists would object to, because the pure BDD is primarily about requirements definition and about making sure that business experts and coders are on the same page with the features they're developing. And it's not about fiddly little UI details and things that are implementation specific necessarily. But when you're building a Drupal site, it's a very, very complicated beast. And it's got all these modules, and they interact in strange ways. And so unit testing tools will not get you testing the whole system. So what we end up doing is using Behat, and we write tests that are actually full of UI details and implementation details that are a bit too specific if you were doing pure BDD. I actually don't know really in the wild how many people do BDD this pure and how many people use it the way we're using it, which is a nice way to write automated tests that capture functionality. So I want to show you what you get. What does an automated test look like? What happens when it runs? So I'm going to switch over here to my terminal, and I have a local installation of Panoply, which uses Behat a lot. They have a whole suite of tests, and they have a continuous integration that I'm going to show you a little later here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And so I am in this Panoply site, and here's where the tests live. And some of this is going to be a bit obscure if you're not used to this, but I'm just going to type in a magic command that's going to kick off a test, so you can see what it looks like. Type it correctly. Typing in, so here it spits out what the feature is, and it's going to take a little bit to start up here. But this is a test that tests the ability of a user to log in, the ability of a user to request a reset of their password, and to use the one-time login link. So this is what it's testing. It sets up a user, the test does. Then it says, you know, given I'm on the user page, can I log in with the credentials I set up? And can I request a new password? And so there it is. I just tested that. That's kind of cool, right? There's a lot of green, which is good. It means the test passes. And this is something that you can test without actually clicking around in a browser, because it doesn't require any JavaScript. These are all things you can do with just the very, very simple headless browser. What this is doing on the back end is it's using the Mink library to fire up a browser that runs completely headless and just sends in commands like fill out this field, click this link, and here's what you get, the results of it. But if you have a more complicated site, as many Drupal sites are because of the WYSIWYG editor and such, you might need to interact with some JavaScript. And in that case, what Behat can also do is it can fire up a real browser that it will drive for you. And I'm actually just going to, I don't know, let's see, going to make sure my equipment. Okay, good thing I did that. So now I'm going to run a test that will, you know, this is a live demo, so what could possibly go wrong, right? That will test a user to use the WYSIWYG and the link it function to add a link to an internal and external page. And at a certain point, it will have to spin up a real browser because the link it feature uses a pop-up and autocomplete and all kinds of stuff that, oh, now here it is, here's my browser. And so it's logging into my Panoply site. It's creating a page to be the target. And it's saving the page, going to the link, checking that it works. And now it's going to start the whole process over again and try it with an external link. So it'll log in, create a user just for the purpose, actually it doesn't need to create that page. And then it'll click the link and make sure that it's on the correct destination. Yep, so that all passed. So that is, that's pretty cool. The technology can run the browser completely headless, or it can fire up a real browser for you. You can tell it which browser to use. And I actually find it I'm new enough at this that it's actually kind of fun to watch, but I imagine it would get really boring after a while because it's just what you would do to test it, except you're not clicking the link. Yes, you have a question?
Yes. For login feature,
Mm-hmm.
we have to verify the email.
Well, what this does, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, is I am using the Behat extension to Drupal, which is, or the Drupal extension to Behat, I guess you could call it both ways, which gives you a lot of built-in functions that are specific to Drupal, including creating a user for you. So if you had a verify email step, you would probably have to write your own function to handle that. Like it would create the link, right? It would send an email, and there would be a link in the email. So you'd have to, I think you can use Drush for this. You'd have to create the email link and then simulate someone clicking on it, which you can do. So that is great, and I love it. So that's what it looks like, and how you get all that. These are all the technologies that are in use to set this up. Composer is a PHP package manager and dependency manager. Behat is the behavioral testing library. Mink is what creates the headless browser that ran the first test. This SE is Selenium. That is what I use to drive the real browser. And this little Drupal guy in a hat with a B on it is the Behat extension to Drupal. So there is a whole stack of technologies that you can use, and I am going to focus here on the not so much on the technical details, but basically, if someone wants to see me go into this in depth, I can do it at the end. But since I already have it set up, I'm just going to talk and not so much demo how you get it. So I have Composer already installed. Let's see. Oh, come on, do it. Okay. So this is a composer.json file. This one comes with Panoply, and this is what Composer needs in order to install things for you. It's a file that looks like this, and you can see that it's requiring the Drupal extension to Behat. It's also requiring some specific versions of the dependencies, and it's saying, you know, where should I put my stuff? So if you had Composer installed, then you would just go to this directory and issue the command composer install, and using this file, it would download all the dependencies for you, and then it outputs this lock file which records exactly what version of everything that you have. So many people use it for package and dependency management so that you know you're always building the same thing. Then you install the Behat Drupal extension. You configure your environment. You need to have a configuration file to tell Behat where all of its tests are. So I'm going to look at the template file. This is what comes with Panoply, and it gives you all these all these parameters that you can send in. where it finds the features, what extensions it's using, how it's connecting to Drush, how it's connecting to the Drupal API, and then you can do all these fun things like you can define regions in your content using CSS selectors that will allow you to look for things in specific places on the page. For example, if you have 5 or 6 edit links on your page and you want to test that one specific one is there, then you would have to look for it in a specific region. Otherwise, it would just report that the first one was there. So all this configuration. And then if I do mine, there's only a very few things I need to change, namely what my base URL is, what my Drush alias is, and what the path to my Drupal root is. So that's all I need to do to this setup template file in order to tell Behat everything it needs about my installation and how to run tests. The next thing you have to do is to download and install Selenium, which is available. No, not that. Okay, Selenium is available. And I have links to all this in the resources in the slides, so you'll be able to see it. Let's go to, install Selenium, and then if you're starting with a distribution that includes tests, you can just run them. I haven't done anything special to this. All I did was set up my configuration file and issue the magical command that runs the tests. So that's pretty cool. Panoply has a whole suite of tests. All these tests here, content item, content list, demo, landing page, link it, login, etc. So these are the tests that they have built in order to make sure that when they update the media module, for example, that their functionality doesn't break. And I have actually very happily caught a number of regressions using automated testing on OpenBerkeley, which is a distribution that we are building that's based on Panoply. So the next thing I want to show you is, well, maybe you have some functionality you want to test that that nobody's written a test for yet. So you can write your own feature file without any code whatsoever. You just write the plain English sentences in the format that the Behat requires, and you can write your own tests. So I'm going to do a little example here. If you ever want to know what you have available, oops. This list command for Behat, and it will spit out all of the step definitions that it has access to. And so I actually sometimes, Panoply is always adding step definitions. The next edition of the Behat Drupal extension will add step definitions. So I just sometimes keep this in a text file. And so look, here's one that Panoply's added. Given Panoply Magic Live previews are disabled, for example, it's useful for them. There's a ton of these, and basically these are all given, when, then, and these things in here inside the quotes are regular expressions that will match either a text snippet or a CSS selector or a region name that you just fill in your test. So let's look at first here. So here's the link it test, and you can see that they're using when I click the button in the WYSIWYG editor, which actually is quite a difficult problem to solve JavaScript-wise, but we solved it. I actually helped. I feel very proud of myself. But anyway, so the link it test is doing a couple things here. It has a background, which means at the start of each scenario, these steps will run. I can click a button in the WYSIWYG editor. I'm filling in a form field with this text. I'm pressing a key. You can do key presses here. Right now they can only be associated with a form field, but it shouldn't be too hard to do a key press on any focusable element. Then I'm checking that this field should contain this text, etc., etc. I'm clicking a link in a region. And so aside from the fact that these are like form field IDs, this is all pretty much just plain English. So now I'm going to write a test. And so what I want to test is, can I add an item to my main menu? So I'm cheating a bit because I've done this before, but don't want to watch me type, I can just copy it. Does anyone care? Well, well, let's just copy it. Let's do that. So yeah, I'll step through it as we're so. So here's the feature that I wrote, just in plain English. In order to manage my site's navigation as a site administrator, I need to be able to add pages to the main menu. And I have to tag it here. These are special tags that say API means that this is not purely a black box test. I need access to Drush functions or Drupal API functions in the background in order to set up the conditions of it. So you can run a test completely black box, but then, which means the tester is completely ignorant of the guts of your system and is only interacting with the user interface, which can be useful, but in this case it would do, like, given I'm logged in as a user with the administrator role, saves you a lot of steps. So that is a built-in function in the Drupal extension, which I can just use.
Can you give an example again where you won't use some feature?
Where I wouldn't use an API, if I actually wanted to test every little linky that I'm clicking on. So I did use the API to test the login feature because it creates the user for me. But if you wanted to test the process of registering, like I go to the user page, I create a new account, then you might not want to use the API because you actually want to test that experience of I type in something here and I type in something here and I click enter. So you wouldn't use the API to set up a user, you would test the full-on black box experience of creating.
If I give an API, will it create, if it doesn't require it, but if I make it an API, will it create a problem?
No. No, you could tag every scenario with API and it just wouldn't need to. And so you tag it with API to let Behat know that, hey, I need access to either Drush or the Drupal API. The difference between those is Drush, you only have access to things that you can do in Drush, but you can run the tests, you can have your tests run here and hit a site over here on another server. You don't need to hook directly into Drupal. If you're using the Drupal API, then the tests and the system under test have to be on the same system. So, and this JavaScript is not strictly speaking necessary because there's nothing in here that requires JavaScript, but this JavaScript tag just says, hey, fire up a browser, instead of running it completely headless with Make. So, given I'm logged in as a user with the administrator role and I'm viewing a test page node with the title testing menu page, that's also using the Drupal API to create a page for me with this title.
What is yellow there?
Yellow, this is syntax highlighting for Gherkin, which is this language, and it's not smart enough really. So what it says is the yellow is things
That's
that...
a reserved word.
No, it's not a reserved word.
It's
It's something I'm passing in. But it's not smart enough to not highlight this in yellow. My syntax highlighting for Sublime is not perfect. This should be white. The things inside the quote marks are supposed to be yellow. So when I click Edit in the tabs region and blah, 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 so I'm just clicking through the form fields, then I should see the link, and this is the text of the link, in the main menu region. So let's run this and see if it passes. Okay, so it'll spin up a browser, And if I've done everything right, it should pass. So live demo. And here comes the browser. It's logging in my fake user. It's creating a just random text for the body, and it passed. So one thing that's nice about the Drupal extension to Behat is that it cleans up behind itself. Any user that it creates, any node that it builds, will be wiped out at the end of the scenario.
But
So,
the UID gets increased.
what?
UID gets
Yes, the node ID, file IDs, those all get incremented. But all of the actual nodes are deleted and the users are deleted. There's actually a bug in the Panoply test. The one-time login link test does not clean up after itself. But if I go to my...
one other thing, if it doesn't pass, well, like,
Stop. No. Okay, hold on.
What
There.
is it, why is it doing this?
It's the Google Hangout thing. It's just since I'm screen sharing the screen share of the screen share, basically.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So if I go to my local site and I log in, and I go to my people page, I have this one extra user, which was for the fact that the Panoply one-time login test doesn't clean up after itself. But although I've run like 5 or 6 tests, and it's created a different user for every one of them, and they're all wiped out. If I go to my content page, then I only see the Panoply demo content. I don't see anything else that's been provided. So that is very, very, very cool. I like it a lot. So I've just written my own test. Let me get to mine. Yes.
So my question is, if your tests fail
Yeah.
at some point, does it still clean up after?
Yes. Yes. If it fails, it cleans up. If it crashes, it won't. So if you are writing a test and debugging things, then I highly recommend that you keep an eye on your Selenium output, and then it gives you it gives you so much information on things that crash with JavaScript. Behat's pretty good about throwing an exception instead of outright crashing when the wrong things happen. But you can actually crash a test, and in that case it would not. It would just, the browser would stay open. You notice it even closes the browser for you. The browser would stay open if it was a Selenium test, and it would just, and you'd have to go in and clean up after it. But if it just fails, it'll clean itself. So that's pretty cool. I've just written a test that does this for me, and I can run it anytime I want, which is cool. But you can make it even cooler by solving the next problem up the chain. And I have a name for this problem. I call this problem "Nobody Wants to Be the Monkey." And what you've done with writing this test is you've saved yourself the problem of in order to test this, I have to fire up a browser myself and click, 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 click. But you still haven't truly, fully automated it, as long as you still have to tell it to run the test. So if I want to test my menu feature, I actually have to run the test. I have to have a local installation. I have to remember to test it. Blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to be the monkey. I'm still the monkey if I have to do that every time because it's boring and tedious, and I should have the power of technology be able to do that for me. So continuous integration is where someone else is the monkey for you. And this is a screenshot of a test on Panoply where it shows you, and this is just a little subset here, but if you wanted to check out the slide and go to this link, you could actually see this build result. Let's actually see if that works. Yeah, so this is the result of a test that runs on Panoply's continuous integration setup, where they've got all this stuff going on. They've got, tells you that it passed, tells you it's currently got an error, but the whole test passed. And they're not only testing the new code, they're testing upgrading from all of the previous editions as well. So they have this whole thing scripted where every time anyone makes a commit to their repository on GitHub, it runs this for them. So let me go back to...
It's just a shell script.
It's a Travis script, yes. If you want to do this yourself, there are many different ways to do this. Basically, you need something from column A and you need something from column B. Column A is a place to host your code repository. Where do you commit your changes to? And this little guy is GitHub, and then we have all these other options. Code at Berkeley, if you're working here at Berkeley, this is a Subversion hosting service. Bitbucket allows private hosting of Git repositories. It also can be run. You can use it as a cloud service. You can also install it and run it within your own server farm. And then you need something in column B, which is the actual continuous integration server. So this is Jenkins. We have Jenkins available at Berkeley. It's not currently available for PHP projects, just Java and Rails, but we have it. Travis is, a lot of people use Travis because it hooks in very nicely with GitHub, and it is free to open source projects in public repositories on GitHub. CircleCI and Drone are other options for a continuous integration.
So if you have a code on one of these nifty hosting services like Pantheon.
Yeah. Pantheon's a little more complicated because Pantheon actually isn't the repository.
They use backend as Git. Yeah.
Yes. They actually use, Pantheon has continuous integration and they use CircleCI. So at the last DrupalCon, there was a BOF about continuous integration using Pantheon, and someone who was actually doing this demonstrated a script where using Travis and GitHub and Pantheon, you could tell your script to actually spin up a multi-dev site on Pantheon. So you basically have to encrypt your Pantheon credentials, and it will run the test on Pantheon. You couldn't use the Drupal API because if your tests live on Travis and your system under test is on Pantheon, you can only use Drush. So, for example, for Panoply, it wouldn't work because they're using a lot of stuff with the Drupal API. So, how do you get this to work? And so, committing a change to a fork of Panoply will kick off the whole suite. Does everyone understand? Does everyone understand that sentence, or should I explain it a little bit more?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay, so am I actually going to do this? Sure, I'll do this. Let us go back to, okay, so here's me on GitHub. I have to sign in. Yeah. So I am contributing. Part of working on Open Berkeley involves us actually contributing code back upstream to Panoply because it's what we're based on. And if we're fixing it in Open Berkeley, hey, why don't we just pass it back upstream so that everyone can get the benefit? So I have a fork of Panoply, which is I think that's actually specific to GitHub, where it's not like something that's built into Git. It's a GitHub thing where here's this repository, I want to work on it, so I will essentially clone it, fork it for myself, and then I can make commits to it without mucking around with something upstream and maybe breaking something of theirs. And then when I think I'm done with what I've done, then I could submit a pull request that says basically, hey, here's my code. Do you want to accept it? Strictly speaking, I wouldn't do that with Panoply because Panoply is their code is, the only reason they have their code on GitHub is for continuous integration. Otherwise, their code is just on Drupal.org, and so the way to submit a change to Panoply there is to submit a patch in the issue queue. But if I were working on one of these Open Berkeley features, then that is how I work on my local copy. I make all the changes I want, I commit them, I test them, then I submit a pull request that says, hey, my code's ready, and then Kathleen or someone will review it and say, yes, I will accept this, or she'll punt it back and say, no, it needs more work. So what happens is I have this fork of Panoply, and if I look at it, at this travis.yml file here, this is what sets up their continuous integration. And I also have a Travis account, and what that means is, and I've set it up to watch this, so what that means is every time I make a commit to my fork, GitHub is connected to Travis. Travis will notice, and Travis will kick off the entire suite of Panoply tests built using my code, not using Panoply's code. So I could actually do this. If you, where was that? Was it in another browser? No, it wasn't. Maybe it was on my. Was it here? Yeah, okay. So if you look at this test, it tells you this task ran for 6 hours, 2 minutes, and 17 seconds. That's a lot. And each individual run of it took about 50 minutes. And that is actually, that's close to the limit for a free test on Travis. If your tests don't finish in 50 minutes, they'll just stop and they'll say, hey, you might want to break up your test into separate runs so that it doesn't do this. And they're looking at why it's taking so long. I don't actually know. But if I sign in, well, this is a different browser, so maybe it won't remember me. Signing in, yeah. No, don't. I can see the last time I ran a test on Panoply. Oh, look, it failed. Sometimes you get gremlins. Like, for example, everything passed except this one, and that was probably just a gremlin. That is one of the issues with Selenium, is sometimes it just goes, ah! And then it crashes and fails, and you never know why, so gremlins. So if we actually look at this one, you get all these results here. Look, so this is just like what I see on my screen. This is the output, and then I can go down to the, somewhere it's going to fail. Yeah. Yes, Selenium, WebDriver exception. That's Selenium basically going all overturned cockroach and not being able to go any further. So this is really useful. So if I make a commit to my local fork of Panoply, then it will it'll kick off the test. So this is where I'm going to cross all of the fingers I have, because this is, you know, live demo. So repo. The origin of it, so when I push, it'll go to mine, but I can pull in changes from the upstream, so I'm going to go master into my local. Oh, we don't go master, we call it 7.x, 1.x. Okay. Okay. So now I am, you know, I've got all the latest changes from Panoply, and you know, actually, this is not going to work exactly the way I want it to. So if we have time at the end, I'll come back to this, because one of the things that Panoply has done in order to make their tests more reusable is to put all of this testing stuff into a separate module. So it's something, so I would have to actually commit a change to Panoply test and then change the make file to build it with that version of Panoply test. So it'll take a little bit longer than I really want. But if we have time and you guys want to see it, I'll come back at the end and show it. But actually, what the hell, I'll just do this. if I push this to my local, hopefully, just the fact of me pushing something, even if it's just the latest changes from Panoply, will kick off the tests. So I can go back and check that after it's had time to wake up. So, okay. So committing a change to a fork of Panoply will kick off the whole suite. And that's what continuous integration gets you, is that you don't have to think and remember to run the tests. All you have to do is commit your code like you always normally would, and continuous integration sees it happen and runs the test for you and then reports back. Panoply actually has it set up so that Travis will put a message in the Panoply chat room and let you know if the build has failed. So if you're in IRC in the Panoply chat room, you'll get a message that says, my build, or whatever, has failed. And then I feel bad and I have to go fix it. So we'll check back in to see if that actually started running it. So the next thing that you might want to know is how do you get access to all these wonderful step definitions, and what if there isn't one that does what you want to do? So this is my little stork picture here of where do step definitions come from. And let's go back to, let's open some of this stuff up here. So the one thing that Behat needs, in addition to the configuration file, the template, is it needs this file called featurecontext.php.
Is it a part of the Drupal extension?
Is that the Drupal extension? I forget. No, actually, it's part of Behat. Behat needs a feature. Behat itself, with or without Drupal, needs a featurecontext.php. And it can be empty if you're just using functions, steps that are defined elsewhere. For example, let me also open. Normally, feature context would extend Drupal context. But Panoply is putting this extra layer in so that a child distribution doesn't have to merge in changes to feature context. So they actually put all their custom definitions in panoplycontext.php. So this is a PHP class file which defines functions. For example, here's something they're doing to fix it so that if you use the built-in function that creates a random string, you can actually refer to that string later. It's very useful. So they're actually overriding this function. And yeah.
So you scan this file to get to the functions?
No, actually, I would just do, where am I? I can list them. Yeah. So and I actually put them in a text file for reference sometimes because people do add latest versions. Although if you see in this composer file, you can see that I'm probably not going to get any new definitions from Drupal or from any of this, well, from the Drupal extension, unless I choose a more recent version. So what the composer does is it tells you you're always building the same version of the Drupal extension. So I wouldn't get any new definitions there unless I updated it. But anything that Panoply added to this Panoply context, I would. So a fun thing here about the Drupal extension is you see this thing where it says subcontexts? That is a way that I can tell it to look other places for more step definitions. So a module, yes. So a module, you can do this in Behat too. You would add a subcontext and it would be a PHP file, and there's plenty of ways to do this with just Behat stuff, not with Drupal Behat stuff. But what Drupal Behat gives you is the ability to say, hey, go look in these places for subcontexts and let's see where I would find them.
You can add more than one subcontext.
Yes. So for example, here, steps. In this steps folder, if you name a file something.behat.inc and put it in your module, and then you tell it Behat in your configuration where to look for it, then it will find them all. So for example, media. Here's step definitions that are specifically for media. Look, I click the fake button. You know, when you use the media interface to upload a file, it has a little submit button. It's not really a button. So we had to write this crazy JavaScript thing in order to click it, because Selenium can't execute a click on something that it doesn't think is a link or a button. I hate it. So this is an additional function just to make that work, so you can really test the WYSIWYG editor. So all of these files here in this folder, here are some definitions that are specific to panels. Here are some that are specific to WYSIWYG, and here are some that are just for Panoply as a whole. There's a ton of them.
So in the subcontext, you just give the path, not the actual file name.
Yes, you just give the path, and it will look for files anywhere. So what this path is essentially doing is it's going up 3 levels and looking anywhere, and it will go recursively down the whole tree. So, and that's what that points to is the modules directory. So anything that's in the modules directory that adds a step definition, it will be found and it will be available to you. And if I change this path or I removed it, then all of a sudden I wouldn't have access to the same step definitions. Yes, if you are using that. But with Behat, you can also do a subcontext, and I don't have an example of it. But basically, instead of extending Drupal context, you would extend subcontext and then implement an interface. This is all a little bit voodoo for me because I wouldn't call myself an object-oriented programmer. So it's a little bit cargo cult of like, oh, I type this incantation, it works. But you can, in your feature context, in here, in this construct, you could say, hey, look at this subcontext, and then you would give it a file name. So instead of just requiring Panoply context up here, if you wanted to use it as subcontext, you would say, hey, give me this subcontext, here's its name, here's its file name. So that is something that you can do to add your own step definitions. But then you have to make sure to, the thing about the Drupal extension to Behat is it automates the discovery of subcontexts. Whereas if you're doing it here, you have to put it in your feature context and tell it to go look for it. So, let's go back to where do step definitions come from? And now we're going to at least get started on writing our own step definition. Okay, a fundamental question. What is it?
How long does the Behat extension has been around? Is it we have it for 6.6?
No,
It's
no.
available when they started Drupal 7.
Yeah, and it's not a module in the way that other things are modules. It doesn't depend. I don't think it depends on a particular version of Drupal. I think it will figure out whether you're using Drupal 6 or 7 and adjust for it. There might be some things you can't do. Because if you go digging down into the code, so the Drupal extension, the Behat or the Behat extension, whatever, is not a module. It's essentially, it's a composer.json file and a bunch of step definitions. So
We upgrade from 7 to 8, we don't have to rewrite the complete file or anything.
That shouldn't make a difference, although the Behat extension should take care of that, of figuring out whether you're on Drupal 7 or 8. because it figures that out for 6 and 7. To the best of my knowledge, again, this is a little bit of, this is me discovering it as I go along writing this stuff. So the Drupal extension is not a module. So you can install it on any Drupal site. What it gets you may be different depending on whether you're in 6, 7, or 8. And I believe there's a lot of conversation going on in Drupal 8 about using Behat as one of the testing strategies and sort of just including it, because Drupal 8's already using Symfony, a lot of these things. So it would make sense, in addition to the unit tests, to have some system-level tests that could test like the whole string of interaction from sign up to login to roles to everything.
So there's a lot of overhead here in defining the definitions for different features. Yeah, there are some basic features probably.
Yeah.
Drupal 8 can even bundle it.
Yeah.
But the custom features.
Yeah, I actually find that it's if let's take a look at the Panoply. Yeah, so these are the custom step definitions that Panoply has built for their distribution. A lot of these things are things that I think should go back into the Drupal extension itself, because it's things like then I should see this text in this element with this attribute set to this. That level of detail of a of a test is not currently, as far as I know, available in the Behat Drupal extension. So we wrote it because we wanted to see that, hey, if the WYSIWYG editor is working, then it should apply the align left, the style align left to a paragraph that you're trying to align left. In order to test that, we have to be able to see the region, the element, the text inside, and the attribute on the container tag. These are things that would be useful to push back upstream, so I hope that happens. But I don't know necessarily what would be involved in that. We'd probably just submit an issue to the Behat Drupal extension and say, hey, we have all these functions. Let's do it. So there is some overhead here, but the Drupal extension does give you a lot that you can write some pretty cool tests with it. So I want to demo, I've actually written a new feature which, so this is a test that is supposed to test the ability to use the Panoply widgets to add a submenu to a page. So that's one of their available widgets. If I go back to wherever I have Panoply open, if I do this, and if I do customize this page, and I do add content, then one of the things I can do is add a submenu. And I have all these options, override the title, which, you know, it's the main menu, what's the parent item, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to write a test for that. So I'm just going to run this test and see what happens. The submenu widget test. It's going through its bootstrapping here. It's opening the browser. I'm narrating. And let's see what it gets me. Okay. So, looky here at my test results. I get all this green, meaning all this stuff passed. And then, when it's yellow, it's like, hey, one scenario and 2 undefined steps. And then it gives you this starter code. You can implement step definitions for undefined steps with these snippets. So then, all I have to do, I copy this code. I put it into my feature context, which I closed. I put it into my feature context here. Did I actually copy it? And then what I have to do now is, see, it's given me this, see, I have this regular expression type thing here, another one here. It's set these up as arguments, and then I write the logic that says, how do I actually accomplish this? And it's reminding me that if it fails, I should probably throw an exception that will give me some useful information about what happened instead of just saying, it failed. That is how you get started on writing your own step definitions. And it does require, this is the point at which you have to have PHP knowledge, and you have to be able to find your way around object-oriented PHP in order to really make it happen. But if you are able to cover all your needs with the existing steps, then you don't ever have to see this. You don't have to worry about it. You just write your tests using the definitions available to you, and you can get pretty far with that. So I'm going to sort of talk through how I would go about writing this. I'm not actually going to write it, because I'm sure that I would type a million things wrong and then get frustrated with what I would be doing. So not that much live demo am I going to do of me actually writing the function. But I'm going to look at an example function that Panoply already gives me, which is assert region button. Here's an interesting one. Or actually, assert region element text CSS. So what this does, this is the one, then I should see this and that with what? So then I should see, this is the text, in this element with this CSS property set to this in this region. So that is going to be a good starting place for me to start writing this function, because what I'm testing is, then I should see the menu blank in the blank region. So a menu is going to have, let's look at this here. Book. If I look at this, if I inspect the main menu, look, nav ID equals main menu. That's pretty cool. That's probably coming from my theme. Let's see if there's anything more useful here. So the main menu has some CSS selectors that might be useful. This is the user menu. So if I go, yep, secondary menu. It's actually
that function is text CSS, isn't it?
yeah, this is something that is actually written for Panoply. It doesn't come with a Drupal extension. So assert region element text CSS. So this is, so if you check out Panoply and look at this file, this is the function. So it's looking for it has all these things that it can test for all at once: text, tag, property, value, and region. And it walks through first this function find all, and you're saying find all by CSS. I think you can also do it by XPath if that's what you like. But basically it's looking for an element that matches the tag selector via CSS as opposed to XPath. XPath is a little more fiddly to write, so if you can do it with CSS, it's probably easier. Then it says, hey, if I can't find that, if this array is empty, then it means I didn't find any of those elements. Then it throws an exception that says, this element was not found in this region on this page. Then it looks through the elements and looks for the text inside the element, and then it sets it to true, found to true, and then if it's not found, it says the text was not found in the element in the region on the page. So it's kind of like, you know, green grass growing all around. It goes through bough on the branch and the limb on the tree and that kind of thing. And then it'll check for the property, and then it'll check the property and the value. So that is the basis of how I would write this feature to specifically look for a menu. And also, I also wanted to check not only I should see the menu in the region, but I should see the link, not just anywhere, but in the menu where I put it. So that was kind of a whirlwind tour through Behat and all the things it can get you if you want to use it. I'm going to send out a link to these slides. These are how you can get everything. The resources, the Drupal extension, Composer, Behat, Selenium, GitHub, Travis, Panoply, Open Berkeley. Does anyone have any questions or want to go into more depth on something that I flew past while we were here?
How do you do testing? Unit test, and after that you follow by this? Or?
Well, we're building a distribution. So a lot of our stuff really can't be tested with unit testing because it's not a unit. It's not a discrete single piece of functionality that can be tested in isolation. The one exception to that, I think, would be the CalNet authentication module. Probably could do with some unit tests. So we actually don't do unit testing because we are not testing units. We're not building units. We're building features that tie in media, WYSIWYG, node stuff, user stuff. It's all in, like we're building a feature for news. So you can add a news item, have it appear in lists, have it sorted by date, add a little widget to a page. That has so many moving parts that I don't think we actually could write a unit test for it. This is pretty much the only kind of test we could use.
The only test.
Yes. So when
any QA after this?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. So we don't have anything close to full test coverage. Neither does Panoply. They're relatively new to this, and they're adding more. So, and as you saw by how long it took the Travis stuff to run, full test coverage, we would have to really look at why the tests are taking so long to run, or split them up and run them in separate runs, or pay for a service that would allow you to have tests that ran for 6 hours. So we still do QA and a certain amount of user testing as well.
Is there any automated testing for QA?
This would be how you do it. I think.
This is the only testing here.
Yes, this is the only automated testing we're doing. There are all kinds of things you can do with the browser automation.
Selenium is one of them.
Yes. So Selenium, you can write Selenium scripts in addition to this that will do anything that a person can do in a browser. You can use Phantom.js for automation. You can use Grunt. You can use all kinds of things. But I still would say that there are some things you can't automate, and usability testing is something that you cannot automate. So until we have full test coverage, I don't even know how possible that's going to be to get what we would call full test coverage. But there's still going to be clicking an interface and a little bit of monkey work. So. Monkeys are cute, but I don't necessarily want to, yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for coming. And, oh look, my test is running. It worked. Look, nobody leave yet. Help. So here, I did a commit to my fork, and it's running all the tests.
Do you have that pink lining at the bottom? Pink. Oh.
Nope, nothing failed yet. Well, it's not finished yet. It hasn't run all the tests. So if I look at this, it's
It's going on.
it's going. Yeah, and hopefully they'll all pass, no gremlins, and then no little bot will complain in the chat room that my build failed.
Cool. Thank you
So,
very much.
all right.
Maybe I'll see you on Friday.
All right. So actually now, I need to stop the webcast. I'm going to stop.
Anyone